This time I thought I would Kibbe type some animated movie villains because I always find the villains to be the most interesting in regards to design. First up is Ursula. I was fully expecting every villain just to be dramatic, but actually, if you look at the way she's posed, if you look at images on like Google search, or if you just watch the movie and pause, you'll notice that she's posed quite sensually. Like, look at that picture of her with the eels, Flotsam and Jetsam. Anyway, they are set up in such a way to mimic Feather Boa, which makes sense because she is based off of the drag queen Divine. So long story short, she's a romantic. Her shapes are small, round, kind of chubby, very dainty. Yeah, she's a romantic. I was actually quite surprised. I didn't expect it. That was pleasant. Next up is Maleficent. She is a dramatic through and through. If you look at her face, her body, her hands, and her little hat, it's all pointed, narrow, sharp lines. Her cheeks, her, not widow's peak, but the widow's peak created by the hat. Her chin, her jaw, her hands, her shoulder line, her outfit, like her little keepy, her collar, everything is narrow, sharp, pointed lines. And the color scheme as well is very dramatic, very striking. Yeah, I just think she's super cool. Jafar, I think, is a dramatic for very similar reasons. He has those same long lines created by, obviously, his face. He's got a very long, jaw, but also his costume, I don't know, I think that's supposed to be a headpiece, that beige color there, but it creates the impression that his neck is incredibly long. His outfit creates a long vertical line, but it's also quite narrow. The pointed shoulder pads, the hat gives him some more height. He's got that very long, sneaky staff. Yeah, everything is long, straight, pointy, sleek. Even his little curly Q beard and his mustache. And his eyebrows as well. So, yes, I think he's a dramatic too. Captain Hook, I tentatively say flamboyant natural. In his face, you can see quite, long, but bumpy and wide, especially the nose, and mouth shapes, right? And his body seems to have kind of like that sort of wide upper part narrowing into a leaner lower part. The only reason I'm tentative is because sometimes it looks like he has quite a strong vertical line, and then sometimes it doesn't, as shown in the picture here on the right. But then again, what's more free spirit chic than pirating? I mean, tell me. Now, I wasn't expecting this at all, but as I was looking at images and clips for this video, I realized that Dr. Facilier reminds me quite a lot of Captain Hook in his appearance. He has that same long, blunted, kind of roundy jawline, has the same kind of roundy eyes, although Dr. Facilier's are more buggy. And he has the same whitish nose, although not as beaky as Captain Hook's. And he has that same sort of width in the upper body, tapering down to sort of a more narrow lower body, although I feel it is more exaggerated than Dr. Facilier. I think Dr. Facilier is more obviously a flamboyant natural than Captain Hook, but it is partially my typing of Dr. Facilier that informs my typing of Captain Hook, because they do remind me of each other in regards to their design. Also, he has skeleton on his hat, and I know that's in reference to the voodoo, but also pirate flag, you know. The Queen of Hearts has a round, kind of chubby-ish lines like Ursula does, and she seems to have a pretty moderate vertical line. Now, I would say she is a self-natural rather than a romantic, simply because of how her face is. She has a similar, round face, round lines in her face, a small nose, right? But her nose is more kind of blunty, and then she's got more of a wide mouth with no lips to speak of. Yeah, I think she's better described as a soft natural. We have mad. Now, her attitude, despite the fact that she's like obviously evil and just grumpy and she doesn't like sunlight, she's very spunky and kind of puckish. She's very mischievous. She has that sort of impish vibe about her. Couple that with her, because the small, roundy shapes of her face, similar to the Queen of Hearts, the sort of yangness of the mouth, and the small, short roundness of her body, I would say she's most definitely a soft Gamine. She's one of my favorite villains and one of my favorite characters. And for the record, whenever she transforms into the lovely maiden, she is a soft dramatic. First and foremost, Professor Hinkle has a pretty short vertical line, as does everybody in the movie. He's got a pretty long face, it's round. He's got a very long and rounded nose. So I think he is a flamboyant Gamine. He's got that compact, rectangular sort of physique, coupled with a masculine face. So I would say he gives me flamboyant Gamine vibes. Shan Yu also has roundness in his body, but it's very sturdy looking. And his face as well, he has very wide, round, blunty shapes in his skull and the contours of his face. So I would say that he's a soft natural. Now, it got a little bit tricky because during his fight with Shang, he was like a good 2 feet taller than Shang, and Shang already looks tall to me. At the very least, he looks moderate. He doesn't look like he's like 5'2". So that was a bit confusing. I was like, oh, okay, is Shan Yu like a giant? But sometimes characters can be shot or drawn in perspective so as to show them more like threatening. Yeah. Oh, for the record, I do think Shang is also a soft natural because he has like very similar shapes except for not as exaggerated. Plus it was the 90s. I feel like the 90s was the era of like soft naturals and flamboyant naturals and that sort of a thing. Like Shan Yu, the coachman has pretty round shapes in his body and in his face. But unlike Shan Yu, he doesn't have that sturdiness. His shoulders are more narrow. It's basically just like a head and a body. And his arms are just coming out of his sides. I mean, obviously not literally, but that's the impression you get, especially with his coat and his scarf. So I think the coachman is a romantic, kind of like smallish but moderate height. He's got this very, like literally a round nose. He's got kind of roundy eyes. He's got round lines for his face, wide hands. Everything is round for him. Round. So, yeah, I think he is a romantic. Ringmaster is yet another character who I think is a romantic. If you look at the picture on the left, I feel like I'm making a lot of mouth sounds. He's basically an egg on top of an egg. Like his head is an egg, and then his body's an egg. They taper into these very small feet. Of course, that also has to do with the fact that he's leaning forward, pointing very enthusiastically. But yeah, he's got roundness everywhere. His nose, his lip, his ear, his face region, which includes his chin. He's got his white hands, his body is all smooth, sweepy, round line, which is why he looks like an egg. So yeah, he's a romantic. If we look at Cruella de Vil's face, we just see sharpness, right? We see that square jaw, we see those triangles for cheeks, and that hair, which is very dramatic, white and black. She has quite long hands, long, big hands. Her arms are very slender. She has very sharp shoulders. She has a long vertical line. In the scene where she comes in and is greeted by Anita, you can tell that she's a lot taller than her. But even like in pictures, she just looks quite tall. She does have some like feminine parts, some curvature, but it's very pointed. Like her bust line is very pointy. Her hips are very pointy. And I don't think anyone remembers Cruella de Vil as being super duper curvy. At least I don't. I remember her as being like very, very skinny and long. Ergo, I think she is a dramatic. Not to mention her color scheme, not just the hair, but the coat and the dress and the red and the white and the black. Very, very dramatic. I think she's a dramatic. I hope that was enjoyable, and I hope you had fun. I certainly think this sort of thing is very fun. I think it's a way that we can practice looking at lines and shapes and things without getting very personal and bogged down, which I feel is the downside of Kibbe typing real people. Please let me know if you disagree with my findings and my opinions on these characters' Kibbe types, because I think it would be interesting to see your perspective as well. We have a lovely time, even though we are currently just kind of not doing well. Ta-ta.